In the last session of day 5 of short-term training program on image processing and its application. This program is AICTE sponsored and being organized by Department of Computer Engineering, Purnima Institute of Engineering and Technology, Jaipur. And I welcome you all again in the third technical session of day 5. This technical session will be on image segmentation using deep learning. So in the morning we had a session on deep learning for medical image classification. In the last session we had talked about image reconstruction and medical imaging, and now we are going to talk about image segmentation. So again we have with us Dr. Manish Bhatt from IIC Bangalore, and he is going to take this session. So I welcome Manish Bhatt sir once again, and over to you sir.
Sorry, my mic was mute. Thank you, Professor. In this session, I'm going to talk about image segmentation and mainly cover image segmentation techniques using deep learning. I will also show some tutorials so that this could be helpful for you in your own research. I will start with sharing my screen now. Okay. So image segmentation in deep learning is a very widely utilized applications and modern computer vision technology based on AI and deep learning methods use them everywhere, which have helped them evolve dramatically in the past decade. And applications of image segmentation include image classification, face recognition, identifying objects in images, video analysis, and classification. And many computer vision tasks require intelligent segmentation of an image, that is to understand what is in the image. So today's image segmentation techniques, they use models of deep learning for computer vision to understand. And these methods were unimaginable only a decade ago. But to understand which real world object is represented by each pixel of an image, deep learning models have helped a lot. And these models can learn patterns in visual inputs in order to predict object classes that make up an image. There are several deep architectures based on convolutional neural network, specific CNN frameworks like AlexNet, VGG, Inception, and ResNet, and typically trained and executed on specialized graphics processing units to reduce computation time. But before we go into much detail, let us see what is image segmentation. Image segmentation involves dividing a visual input into segments to simplify image analysis. These segments represent objects or parts of objects. And there are 3 levels of image analysis. First level is classification, second is object detection, and third is segmentation. This is also shown here by an image. The classification involves categorizing the entire image into a class such as people, animals, or outdoor. For example, here, this can classify the first image as people, cats, and outdoor or greenery. Then there comes object detection. In the second image, as you can see, the square boxes are able to detect either persons or animals. So detecting objects within an image and drawing a rectangle around them is called object detection. And finally, in the third image, as you can see, the segmentation is happening, which is identifying parts of the image and understanding what object they belong to. So segmentation is again 2 types. One is semantic segmentation and another is instance segmentation. Semantic comes from the word, it is a Greek word and it means significant. So semantic segmentation classifies all the pixels of an image into meaningful classes of objects. For example, you have an image of a cycling and you want to segment cycles and the sports persons who are riding these cycles. So doing these two classifications and segmentations is the aim of your problem. You could isolate all the pixels associated with the bicycle and color them as green, and associate all the pixels associated with the sports person as pink. So in the segmented image, you can see pink and green color by segmenting cycles and persons separately. This is semantic segmentation, classifying all the pixels of an image into meaningful class of objects. Now comes the instance segmentation. Instance segmentation identifies each instance of each object in an image. It means that it does not categorize every pixel, unlike semantic segmentation. But if, let's say, if there are 7 balloons in an image, semantic segmentation would classify all the balloons as one instance. That means giving them same color, while instance segmentation identifies each individual balloon. So here are 7 balloons, and this method would classify them in 7 different colors. While in semantic segmentation, you had seen that all the bicycles are green and all the persons are pink. So semantic is same color coding, while instance is different color coding. For example, in balloons image, you can see the 3 steps of image analysis would be: first would be classification. We classify the image and name this image balloons. Then the second step is object detection. We detect balloons and make a rectangle around them. And third step is segmentation, which could be either semantic or instance. If you are doing semantic segmentation, it would identify all balloons in single color code, let's say blue. And if you are doing instance segmentation, it would identify all the balloons in different color code. And you can see here different colors: pink, blue, yellow, green, and red. So there are several image segmentation methods. First, we will quickly see what are old school image segmentation methods. These are commonly used in the past, but are less efficient than current deep learning counterparts. So their usage has been lesser nowadays. And these methods require human intervention and expertise. For example, somebody has to sit there and tell, okay, this is a balloons image, this is a cat image, this is an apple image. So involving a human also increase the cost of this method, because then you have to pay the salary of that person. So overall, the research cost increases. So there are several old school image methods. The first one is thresholding, which includes dividing an image into a foreground and background. And thresholding converts grayscale images into binary images, or distinguishes the lighter and darker pixels of a color image. Here is an example of thresholding segmentation. We have an image of a Saturn in a space background. The background is dark black and the Saturn is in brown color. We set a threshold that if the pixel values is greater than this, we will classify that pixel as 1, and if the pixel value is less than this threshold value, we could classify that pixel as 0. And then this would give us the segmented image, as you can see on the right side. Background is dark and the object is white. Then other 2 important segmentation methods are either k-means clustering or histogram based image segmentation. K-means clustering is an algorithm that identifies groups in the data, with the variable k representing the number of groups, meaning that this algorithm assigns each data point or pixel to one of the groups based on feature similarity. So for example, this is an image. The first image on the top row, there is an original image of an outdoor scene, And there are several groups. These groups can be blue sky, white clouds, green water, yellow sand, brown tree, and green tree leaves. So you define the groups in 6 categories, and these we define k is equal to 6 because there are 6 categories. Then this algorithm would assign each data point to one of these 6 groups and then perform the segmentation. As you can see here, so these 6 groups has been given different brightness values, and based on this segmentation has been performed. One is, let's say for example, one is yellow sand, two is dark blue sky, three is brighter white cloud, and four is lighter white cloud, five is the shadow of the tree, and six is the tree. Then another image segmentation method is histogram based image segmentation. This uses a histogram to group pixel based on gray values, and a larger peak represents the background gray level in the histogram, and a smaller peak represents the object, which is another gray level. So histogram, as you know, it tells how many pixels of the same values are present in the image. So this is a microscopy image where you wanted to segment the bacteria from the background. Let's say that the blue pixels are the first peak and green pixels are the second peak. So based on this, you can create a divider. For example, it is done here at 0.5, and based on all the pixels who are behind 0.5, who fell below 0.5, they are identified as black, and who are after 0.5, they are identified as white. And in this manner, segmentation can be done for this microscopy image. Now there is another old school image method, which is edge detection. This is used to identify sharp changes or discontinuities in brightness. For example, here is an image of several coins, and passing it through an edge detection algorithm would identify sharp changes, and the boundaries of these images are segmented in the second image. This can be done by using a differentiation algorithm or differentiation filter. So these were old school image segmentation method. Now we will focus on deep neural networks and deep methods for image segmentation, and we will also see some tutorials. So one of the most popular deep neural network is convolutional neural network. These contains 3 types of layers. One is convolutional layers, where a kernel or filter of weights is convolved in order to extract features. Second is nonlinear layers, which apply an activation function on feature maps in order to enable the modeling of nonlinear functions by the network. And finally, pooling layers, which replaces a small neighborhood of a feature map with some statistical information. For example, mean or max. If you are using max, it is called max pooling layers, and about the neighborhood and reduced spatial resolution. There are many well-known CNN architectures, and some of these which are very popular, are AlexNet, VGGNet, ResNet, GoogleNet, MobileNet, and DenseNet. Then there are recurrent neural networks, also called RNNs, and long short-term memory-based networks. So RNNs are widely used to process sequential data such as speech, text, videos, and time series, and where data at any given time position depends on previously encountered data. RNNs are typically problematic with long sequences, as they cannot capture long-term dependencies in many real-world applications, and often suffer from gradient vanishing or exploding problems. However, if you are using a long short-term memory LSTM network, it can avoid such issues. Then there are encoder-decoder and autoencoder models. Encoder-decoder models are a family of models which learn to map data from an input domain to an output domain via a two-stage network. The encoder represented by an encoding function z is equal to fx. This can compress the input into a latent space representation, and then there would be a decoder which aims to predict the output from the latent space representation. One of a very common example of encoder-decoder network is UNet, which many of you must have heard. These models are extremely popular in image-to-image translation problems, and autoencoders are special case of encoder-decoder models in which the input and output are the same. And then the recent popular deep methods are GANs, also called generative adversarial networks. These GANs are a newer family of deep learning models, and they consist of two networks, a generator and discriminator. Just like there was encoder and decoder, now there is generator and discriminator. A generator network G, which maps Z to Y, is in the conventional GAN, learns a mapping from noise Z, which has a prior distribution known, for example, Gaussian or Poisson, to a target distribution Y, which is similar to the real samples. And then there would be another network, a discriminator network D, that would attempt to distinguish the generated samples, fake ones from the real ones, whether this is a fake identification or fake classification, and whether this is a real classification or not. And then we move towards final method, transfer learning. In many cases, there are not enough label data available to train a model from scratch, and one can use transfer learning to tackle this problem. In transfer learning, a model trained on one task is repurposed on another task, usually by some adaptation process toward the new task. What it means that, for example, you have one can imagine adapting an image classification model trained on ImageNet to a different task. ImageNet is an image database, such as text classification or face recognition. So, for example, you created a UNet architecture, and then you took the images from ImageNet database, you trained your network for image classification, and then used this trained network for another task, which could be face recognition. This is what transfer learning, transferring the learning from one database to another database. So let us see how deep learning powers image segmentation methods. Modern image segmentation techniques are powered by deep learning technology, and here are several deep learning architectures used for image segmentation. CNN-based image segmentation. So CNN involves feeding segmentation of an image as input to a convolutional neural network which labels the pixels. For example, you are seeing an image here which is from a street view image. There are multiple cars, a street, multiple trees, and sidewalk. And we want to segment all the parts, all the objects present in this image separately. So we can pass this input into a CNN, and it could create a segmentation map. This CNN cannot process the whole image at once. It often looks at a smaller filter of several pixels each time, and until it has mapped the entire image, basically doing it in small blocks. So the final image, as you can see, is a segmented image where road is classified as pink. So this is an example of semantic segmentation, because you can see all cars are blue. Cars are identified as blue, trees are as red, and background is yellow. So fully convolutional neural network based image segmentation. Traditional CNNs have fully connected layers which cannot manage different input sizes. So all the image size has to be equal in traditional CNNs. If you are using a 200 by 200 pixel image, all the database should have the 200 by 200 size. And fully convolutional network, they use convolutional layers to process varying input sizes and can work faster. So if you are using FCNs, your image database may have images of different size. And the final output layer has a large receptive field and corresponds to the height and width of the image, while the number of channels correspond to the number of classes. So let's say you have 6 classes such as cats, dogs, persons, greenery, rivers, sky. So you need, if you have 6 classes, you can have 6 channels. The convolutional layers classify every pixels to determine the context of the image, including the location of objects. So based on the pixel value, it can classify whether it falls in cats category or in greenery category or in sky category, and then what is inside the object. So what is ensemble learning? Ensemble learning synthesizes the results of 2 or more related analytical models into a single spread. For example, you have 2 methods and you want to bring them together, you want to infuse them together, you can do ensemble learning. Ensemble learning can improve prediction accuracy and reduce generalization error. And segmentation via ensemble learning attempts to generate a set of weak-based learners which classify parts of the image and then combine their output instead of trying to create one single optimal learner. Now let us see some of the popular networks that are used for image segmentation. So one such network is DeepLab. The main motivation for DeepLab was to perform image segmentation while controlling signal decimation. That is, reducing the number of samples and the amount of data that the network must process. Because often we reduce the data size to improve the speed of the network. So DeepLab can perform image segmentation even our signal is reduced. This also enables multi-scaling contextual feature learning, that is aggregating the features from different images at different scales. And this network has used the database called ImageNet and a pre-trained ResNet for feature extraction, and it uses atroz convolutional instead of regular convolutions. There are 3 components of DeepLab. First is atroz convolutions with a factor that expands or contracts the convolutional filters field of use. So then there is ResNet, a deep convolutional neural network from Microsoft. It won also many segmentation awards I think in 2016, and it provides a framework that enables training thousands of layers while maintaining performance. And then there is ASPP, which provides multi-scale information. Then another type of neural network is SegNet. This is an architecture based on deep encoders and decoders. Also, it is also known as semantic pixel-wise segmentation, and it involves encoding the input image into low dimensions and then recovering it with orientation invariance capabilities in the decoder. So if your image has been rotated or it has been flipped through, then still it can learn. This is the main quality of SegNet. Then there is U-Net. Roneberger proposed the U-Net with his names for segmenting biological microscopy images, and that network their network and training strategy relied on the use of data augmentation to learn from the available annotated images more effectively. What data augmentation means is, for example, you have a microscopy image, because in biomedical domain, we have limited set of data. So we have an image, we rotate it. Let's say if you have one image and you rotate it at 10 degree, then you can create 36 images over 360 degree angles. So one image can give you 36 images to train into your network. This is called data augmentation. Rotating, flipping, inverting the same image to increase your database size. The unit architecture comprises of two parts: a contracting path to capture context where downsampling happens, and a symmetric expanding path that enables precise localization. And that's why the resolution is increased with unit. The downsampling or contracting part has a fully convolutional neural network-like architecture that extracts features with 3 by 3 convolutions, and the upsampling or expanding part uses up convolution or deconvolution, reducing the number of feature maps while increasing their dimensions. Feature maps from the downsampling part of the network are copied to the upsampling part to avoid losing pattern information. And UNet initially was trained on 30 transmitted light microscopy images. This seems like a low number, and it won the ISBI Cell Tracking Challenge 2015 by a large margin, but they implemented data augmentation to create the database, to increase their database. Nowadays, UNet has been used in several biomedical applications, including reconstruction, and many research groups, they make slightly change to UNet. They change the training network, training database, and they are achieving very good results. One of the main reasons UNet is popular is because its encoder has an expanding path, which improves the precise localization and in turn gives us a higher resolution image at output. Now let us look at semantic segmentation approach. A general semantic segmentation architecture can be broadly thought of as an encoder network followed by a decoder network. The encoder is usually a pre-trained classification network like VGG, ResNet, UNet, followed by a decoder network. And the task of the decoder is to semantically project the discriminative features like lower resolutions learned by the encoder onto pixel space in the higher resolution to get a dense classification. So UNet works perfectly for this because it has both a decoder and an encoder. Decoder takes the lower resolution and encoder makes the higher resolution. Then there is region-based semantic segmentation. In this method, first our model, deep model, extracts free-form regions from an image and describes them, and this is followed by region-based classification. It is usually done by labeling a pixel according to the highest scoring region that contains it. For example, you are seeing in picture here an input image of a human who is riding a horse is given, and there is some blue and yellow background in the input image. The extraction of the region happens in four segmentation, four regions. One is background, one is person, one is horse, and one is some another kind of background. So all these four regions are warped one by one, and they are passed through a CNN network, and then it classifies it accordingly. Is it aeroplane? No. Is it a person? Yes. Is it a TV monitor? No. Similarly, it can classify based on whatever classifications that network knows. Then there is weakly supervised semantic segmentation. Most of the relevant methods in semantic segmentations rely on a large number of images with pixel-wise segmentation masks. So often we may need 10,000, 15,000, or even 30,000 images. However, manually annotating these masks is quite time consuming. Let us say the task is given to a person to create a database of 30,000 images, and then this person has to annotate all the 30,000 images so that he or she can train their network. So this would be quite time consuming, frustrating, and expensive too. So some weakly supervised methods can fulfill the semantic segmentation by utilizing annotate boundary boxes. In this method, the image can be categorized into some special classifications. For example, as you can see here, three classifications are done: table, person, and TV. So weakly supervised semantic segmentation will create a boundary around table pixels, around person pixels, and around TV pixels, and classify them by giving them a different color code. Box app employed the bounding box annotates as a supervision to train the network and iteratively improve the estimated mask for semantic segmentation. Let us see why image segmentation is now important. There are several applications and we could see them quickly to understand the importance of the accuracy of the algorithm. They are used in object detection and face detection. They are used in medical imaging, where we want to extract clinically relevant information from medical imagery. For example, you are taking a breast scan, a mammography scan, and we are screening it for if there is a cancer present in it or not. So it is very important to segment it precisely if there is a tissue, if there is a tumor tissue present. It is important to segment it precisely so that doctors can rely upon our images and they can remove the segmented part seeing on a screen. So as a segmentation engineer, it is very important to give accuracy to our algorithms. Another application is in machine vision, where applications that capture and processes image to provide operational guidance to devices. For example, let us say in an industry, an inspection system photographs soda bottles and then analyzes the images according to pass-fail criteria to determine if the bottles are properly filled or not. So for this, they can segment the images. They can decide whether, okay, the soda is half filled or full filled, and it can be used. There are applications in video surveillance, video tracking, and moving object tracking in self-driving vehicles. For example, Tesla is highly working towards improving image segmentation algorithm for their own Tesla automated cars. Autonomous cars must be able to perceive and understand their environment in order to drive safely. Then they are used in iris recognition. For example, in Aadhaar identification, they have to capture iris for each person, and it can be used as a form of biometric identification to analyze video images of a person's eye. Then there is face recognition, which identifies an individual in a frame from a video source. Then another application is retail image recognition. This application provides retailers with an understanding of the layouts of goods on the shelf. So how many items are kept in a shelf. Real-time process, it is done in real time to process to detect whether goods are present or absent on the shelf. And if a product is absent, the server can tell that, okay, there is a product which is absent and it needs to be kept again in the shelf, and it will alert the merchandiser and recommend solution for the corresponding part of the supply chain. So such applications, such retail applications are more important in a big supermarket, for example, a Walmart or a Big Bazaar, where there are not enough human employees who can perform a surveillance around the store. So image segmentation algorithms can be relied upon. So when we start working on computer vision projects and using deep learning frameworks like TensorFlow, Keras, and PyTorch to run and fine-tune these models, you will have to run into some practical challenges. Let us see what are these challenges before we go for tutorials. So everybody who is a beginner and who first starts working toward implementing deep learning algorithms, they face these challenges. One of them is tracking experimental source code, configuration, and hyperparameters. So many convolutional networks have many variations that can impact performance. You will run many experiments to discover the hyperparameters that provides the best performance for your problem. And organizing, tracking, and sharing experiment data can be challenged. Uh, Then there is scaling experiments on premise or in the cloud. So CNNs require a lot of computer power. So to run large number of experiments, you will need to scale up across multiple machines. Provisioning machines and setting them up to run deep learning projects is time consuming. And manually running experiments results in idle time and wasted resources. For example, in research labs, you may have a huge deep server, but you will have to scale up your experiments according to your computing power. So you may have to address such challenges. Then managing training data. Computer vision projects use training sets with rich media like images or videos, and a data set can weigh anywhere from gigabytes to petabytes. Then you need to copy and recopy this data to each training machine, which takes time, and it also hurts productivity because 1 or 2 days are only wasted in copying data from one server to another server. So knowing these challenges is important, and because every beginner runs through these challenges. Now we will quickly see 2 tutorials, and then later on I will discuss in more detail how to perform a deep learning based implementation. So in this tutorial, we are going to use a fully convolutional network for semantic segmentation with pre-trained VGG16 model. VGG16 is a very popular network. It is available on internet. Here is the link given. It is developed, I think it is developed by Microsoft or someone, and many research groups around the world use VGG16 model. So we can begin by downloading a pre-trained VGG16 model, and wherever you are downloading the VGG16 model in your own library, you can create a subfolder named model_zoo to the primary code folder. Okay. So there are several files available inside this VGG16 folder now. The first file is train.py. It's a Python file and it is used for training. You will have to set several folders inside here to keep your training images and ground truth images. For example, set a folder for the training images in train_image_dir. dir stands for directory. And then you can create another folder that has the ground truth labels and name it as train label directory. And your VGG16 model can be put in a different folder called model path, where the model is kept. And then you can define the number of classes you want in num_classes. It is inside the train.py file. So there in this file, there are directories, there are lines, code lines, very clearly written. Okay, define the path of your training image folder, define the path of your ground truth folder, define the classes. So let's say if you have 6 classes as cats, persons, greenery, aeroplanes, sky, rivers. So there are 6 classes. So you have to write num_classes equal to 6, and then that's all. You have to run training script. Then second step is predicting pixel-wise annotation using trained VGG network. There is another file called inference.py. It's again a Python file. And then you have to set the image directory to the folder where the input image for the predictions are located. So in this file, you have to write the path of the image directory it could be written as like, you know, the desktop slash folders, projects folder, ground truth images slash image directory, like that. And then set the number of classes again. So we have defined 6 classes. So you have to set num underscore classes equal to 6. And then you have to define a folder and give the path where you want to create your output images. So for example, you can create a folder preddir, predicted directory, and give the name in this file, inference.py, and then run this script. And the third step is to evaluating network performance using intersection over union. So there is another file in the VGG16. All these files would be available in the downloaded folder. So this file is called evaluate_net_iou.py. It evaluates the network performance. So again, you have to, in this file also, you have to give the image directory where you are writing the input images, the folder of the input images, and you have to define the ground truth folder, which is label underscore directory. These ground truth images can be saved as PNG images, and they should have the same name as the corresponding image and PNG ending. So with the PS, for example, if your input images has name cat001 .png, cat002.png, so the label directory also should have the same name. It should also be called cat001.png, cat002.png, something like that. And then set number of classes, which was 6 in this exercise. So number of classes equal to 6, and then run a script. Your classes are cats, dogs, persons, greenery, aeroplane, blue skies, like that. So you understood how we perform VGG16 model. First step, you have to download the model. Second step, you have to define where you are keeping your training images and your ground truth images, and how many number of classes you have. Define these in training file. Define again in the inference file where is your image directory, where is your number classes, and define the predicted directory where you are going to keep your output images. And then define again in the evaluation file so that you can evaluate the network performance, and then run the network. So just three files. One is for training, one is for inference, and one which is output, and one is for evaluation of the network. And you have to create 3 folders, one for training images, one for ground truth images, one for output images, and you have to define number of classes. That's it. And this should be able to run. Now let us see one more example. So in this, we are going to modify the DeepLab code to train on our own data set. DeepLab is again a neural network. And before you begin, you can install one of the DeepLab implementations in TensorFlow. This is also available on internet for download. Here is the GitHub library link. So before you create your own data set to train DeepLab, you should be very clear about what you want to do with it. So here are 2 scenarios. You can either train the model from scratch. You are free to have any number of classes or objects for segmentation. For example, you may have 6 classes as we are discussing, and this needs a very long time for training. Or you can simply use a pre-trained model. So pre-trained model is also available, and this will take for less time, because if you want to training takes at least 4 or 5 hours to complete the training. And then if the training is not performed very well, then you will have to fine-tune your parameters, and then fine-tuning, evaluating performance. It may take 1 week or 2 weeks. So it is much better to use a pre-trained model, and you can download that too. So let us start by creating a database called PQR. So if you want to database PQR, you create a new folder PQR, and then keep this PQR inside the library where you have downloaded your DeepLab. So it could be inside TensorFlow/models/research/DeepLab where you have downloaded /dataset/PQR. And to start, all you need is input images. Let's say you have 5,000 images and you have the ground truth of these 5,000 images. So all you need is these two images, input training images and input ground truth images, and keep them in two different folders. So inside the PQR, where we are keeping all the data set, we will again create some more folders. One folder is called dataset. It should have the following directory structure: JPG images, which would contain the first. Inside this, you are going to create three folders. The first folder, JPG images, is containing all the training images in JPG format. Then there is another folder you are going to create. It is segmentation class, and in this folder you are going to keep all the semantic segmentation annotation, the ground truth, for each of the color input images. And finally, you are going to create another folder, image sets, which would contain three files: the training file, train.txt, which will have list of image names. For example, you have to write just in a column, you have to write cat 001.jpg, cat 002.jpg, cat 003.jpg, the names of all the images. Then in the validation.txt, val.txt, you have to list the image names for the validation set, and then train val.txt, in which you have to list the combined names, like names that were already in the first two text files. You have to just combine them. So creating a database is very simple. Create a folder PQR. Inside this, create a dataset folder, and inside this, create three folders: JPG image, segmentation class, image sets. So what is inside your input folder? For example, one image inside JPEG images, where you are keeping training images, it could look like this. So this image could be classified as trains, and you just have to have 10,000 similar images of different objects, including cats, dogs, greenery, sky, trains, aeroplanes, and classify them by giving them separate labels. Now, you have another folder. In that folder, you have to keep the ground truth. So this folder, here is the image, segmented image. You can see this was the trains image, two trains looking at each other, and here is this train segmented in green color looking at each other. So for example, you will have to give color coded class, and each color represents a unique class. For example, bicycle can be green, cat is black, chair is red, boat is blue, sheep is brown, aeroplane is mustard, horse is pink. So create a color coded images for different classes. So here there are 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 21 classes and 21 color codes. And you may have 30,000 images. So you have to classify these 30,000 images into these 21 classifications. And this would go into the ground truth folder, which is called segmentation class folder. Then how you have to name images. So like I told you, there were three folders. One is JPG images, where you kept training images. One is segmentation class for ground truth images, and then image sets, where you are naming all the images. So inside this image sets folder, train.txt is first file, where you list the image names for the training set sample. .txt file looks like something like this. So PQR underscore 00032, and then PQR33, PQR 0000034. So all the images, you have to name them in a sequence, so that it is very easy for our neural network to read these images together. Once you have performed creating the database by putting them in the required folder and naming them in a sequential manner, then you can define the dataset description in your file. So you have to open this is the file called segmentation_dataset.py, and this is present in this would be present in the dplab/datasets/folder, so where your neural network has been downloaded. Then inside this file, all you have to do is you have to add one line of code that defines the location of the PQR dataset. So you have to write PQR segmentation information PQRs underscore seg underscore information equal to dataset descriptor, and then you have to split it to sizes. For example, if you have 11,111 samples for training, then you have to write train colon 11111, which are the number of files in the train folder. Then if you have validation files are to training plus validation files are total 22,222. So train val is 22222. And if your validation file are 11,000, then val is 11111. Then number of classes, how many number of classes you are giving. It could be 21. It should be 21 because we define here 21 classes. These were the classes: aeroplane, cat, person. Number of classes equal to 21, and ignore labels is equal to 255. White edges that will be ignored to be classes. So all you have to do is write one line of code to describe your data set, and it includes how many classes, how many training images you have, how many validation images you have, how many classes you have, and how many total images you have. That's all. And then in order to train the model on your data set, you need to run the train.py file in the research/dplab/folder, and it is called train.py. So all you have to write in your terminal is train.py, and that's all. Voila, you will have successfully trained your deep lab on your dataset. So we have seen two networks. I have given you examples of two networks, Deep Lab and VGG16. Both have the same, all you have to do is download their codes, and both have the same structure. You have to define one folder for training images, one folder for ground truth images, and one folder for their names. And then all you have to do is give the information of your dataset in one of the Python file, and then you have to run this train.py file. That's all. Now, why we are looking at these datasets? Because we want to implement them somewhere. We have some applications where we want to use them. So one such application is medical image segmentation. And as we were discussing previously, let us look at CT images. CT images are very important in medical imaging to diagnose several diseases or assess treatments, mainly for breast cancer. And doctors typically rely on manual or semi-automatic techniques to study anomalies in the shape or texture of organs of CT scans. So as you know, they look something like this. This is an example of a liver and lesion segmentation. So doctors get this image, a liver image. The liver is annotated in blue boundary, and there is some lesion present inside the left bottom corner of this boundary, so which is annotated with the red boundary. This is some lesion that doctors want to remove. There is another example of an image from a second patient. For this patient, the lesion in red color is smaller, but there are two lesions present inside the liver. So it is very important for someone to give them doctors the correct images so that they can annotate the liver nicely, and they can annotate the lesions separately, and they can then chart out whether they want to perform a surgery or whether they just want to go for another kind of treatment, and that's all. So there is another example of how data augmentation can be done. So once you have, because in medical imaging, you have a very limited set of data set. You have maybe, let's say, 30 images, and then you have to train the whole network. So all you need to do is you need to rotate and perform the flips. So data augmentation can be here from one image, you can create 8 images just by flipping and rotating. That's all this example says. And once you have created your data set, once you have trained your network and you have validated the network, the first question is whether you performed it accurately or not. So to check the accuracy, there is an accuracy matrix called dice similarity coefficient or dice score. So if your predicted image, or if it is 3D predicted volume, is X and your ground truth is Y, so you check the similarity common part in X and Y by X intersection Y, and the total image is X plus Y, which is the union, and you define the dice score in this manner. So if your dice score is higher, you would say that your network is very accurate, and if your dice score is smaller, you would say, okay, my network is not performing well. Maybe I need to fine tune my parameters and let us see what else I can do. So usually dice score is from 0 to 1, and the closer it is to 1, the better performance it is. And for medical imaging applications, we want at least 0.95 or greater dice score. So here is an example scenario. You have a liver image. You pass through it a network 1, which segments the whole liver. This is an example. Or you can create another kind of network where the same liver image, this network, second network, performs 2 tasks. It also segments the whole liver, and it also segments the smaller lesions. So this network is more useful and more beneficial because it can directly tell doctors and help them in performing surgery, because they want to know exactly which part of the lesion has to be removed from that liver. So these are just some more liver segmentation images, and it is just showing how well deep learning networks can perform for image segmentation. As you can see, the blue line is annotating the liver, red lines are annotating the lesions, and then the green rectangular boxes are used for just classification purpose. So I'm going to take a break here for 5 minutes, but before I go, here is an input image, and it shows how semantic segmentation can be done. Different colors are shown in different pixels, so just look at it, and I'll go for a walk, brisk walk around your house, and take up a drinking break, and I'll come back at 3:03. So till now we have seen how to perform image segmentation with old school methods. We also learned about the different different image segmentation based deep neural networks. And then I also showed you two tutorials using BGG16 and DeepLab, how we can perform deep image segmentation. However, before we use any neural network for image segmentation tasks, there has to be certain pre-processing steps. And every researcher has to go through this. So I will first quickly sum up these pre-processing steps, and then we will go in for another tutorial, which is in much depth. So neural network image recognition algorithms rely on the quality of data set and the images used to train and test the models. Here are a few important parameters and considerations for image data preparation. First is image size. So higher quality images would give the model more information, but also would require more neural network nodes and more computing power to process. Then how many number of images you have. The more data you feed to a model, the more accurate it will be, because there will be much more training happening, much more learning happening. And usually we are looking at 30,000 images, 40,000 images, or even more than that. And then the number of channels. So grayscale images have 2 channels like black and white. And color images have 3 color channels, red, green, blue, RGB, with colors represented in the range 0 to 255. Then aspect ratio. We have to ensure that the images have the same aspect ratio and sizes. For example, if one image is 200 by 200 size, often in many neural networks, you have to make sure that all the images that you are inputting have the same size. Typically, these models would assume that a square shape input image is kept, but it is not necessary. Then image scaling is there, which is once all images are squared, you can scale each image. There are many upscaling and downscaling techniques which are available as functions in deep learning libraries. Then you have to know the mean standard deviation of input data to find out the variations in your data. So you can look at the mean image by calculating simply the mean values for each pixels in all training examples and to obtain information on the underlying structure in the images. Then normalizing, it is very important step. Ensure that all input parameters have a uniform data distribution, which means that you have to normalize all the images that you have. This would make convergence speedier when you train the network. And you can conduct data normalization by simply subtracting the mean from each pixels and then dividing the outcome by the standard deviation. And you know how to create mean and how to compute standard deviation of any image, because they can be read in a matrix format. So you can, for example, if you are using MATLAB, you can write mean of A or STD of A, and that's all. Then another important step is dimensionality reduction. You can decide to collapse the RGB channels into a grayscale channel, and this would make training less computationally intensive. And data augmentation. Finally, it is very important. For example, you have just 100 images and you want to train your neural network. Then you will have to flip and rotate each images. Let's say if you are flipping and rotating each image 10 times, so from one image you can create 10 images, and if you are 100 images, you can create 1000 images. So using 1000 images, you can train your neural network much better. But again, there are limitations of deep models. And for an average image with hundreds of pixels and 3 channels, a traditional neural network will generate millions of parameters, which can lead to overfitting. So overfitting is a very common thing, and usually there are several methods such as batch normalization or dropouts. These models would be very computationally intensive, and it may be difficult to interpret results, debug, and tune the model to improve its performance. Deep learning based algorithms require high processing powers. Models are typically trained on high cost machines, and one workstation in India may cost as much as 10 lakh rupees with specialized GPU. So purchasing them is a task for research groups. And these images can fail when images are rotated or tilted, or even when an image has the features of the desired objects, but not in the correct order or position. For example, a face with the nose and mouth, if they are switched around, the classification can be failed. So one of the very good example of this is Deep Full Paper, in which they show that they take a picture of crocodile and it was classified as crocodile, and then they slightly changed the picture, which was invisible to human eye, but then the network started classifying it as a bird. So such limitations may come due to deep neural networks. Now let us see some data sets that are available for segmentations. They are freely used databases, and they can be downloaded and can be used by any of you for your own research. So I am going to list some of the popular data sets that are available, and everyone around the world use them. One of them is Pascal Visual Object Classes. It has 20 categories as listed here. Like these categories are aeroplane, bicycle, bird, boat, bottle, cow, person, train, sheep, and so on. And this database has more than 10,000 images and ground truth for semantic and instance segmentation. So it's a smaller database. I would say there are just 20 categories and 10,000 images. If you want to create a smaller task in your own personal computer, you can use this database. Then another database is called Pascal Context. It has 542 categories, which is huge. There are real indoor and outdoor scenes, and there are more than 10,000 images. There are semantic segmentations, ground truth, and these images includes objects and stuff. Then another dataset is also available, which is called COCO, Common Objects in Context. In this dataset, there are indoor and outdoor scenes. There are more than 80 categories and 300,000 images. So that's a lot. And this kind of data set can be used if you are performing an extensive image segmentation research. You have a very good workstation in your own lab which can handle such a huge data set. So I would recommend going for COCO data set. Then there is Sun RGBD dataset, which has real indoor scenes. There are about 10,000 images, and most of them are 3D items with 58,000 3D items in it. So for 3D segmentation related tasks, go for Sun RGB dataset. Then there is ADE20K. This dataset has 150 plus categories and 22,000 images. And cityscapes. This is another data set with real driving scenes. For example, you are creating a project for automatic driving cars. So you want to create a neural network with real driving scene examples. So you can download cityscapes dataset. It has 25,000 images into 30 categories. So here is an example of the images that it has. You can see people crossing the streets, cars moving in the streets. So there are more than 25,000 similar images, and it can be used for training the network. So going from classification to semantic segmentation, if I have to say simply in one line how to present it, it means taking an input picture, extracting a small batch of it, passing it through CNN, which is trained for image classification, and then classifying the center pixel, which is cat in this here, and then repeat for every pixel. So in that basis, you can create a segmentation mask, which is dog and cat separately. Usually, these deep neural networks learn on more than 1 million parameters. So it is not just about the brightness of the image pixel. There are million parameters involved in deep models. We often do not know what is reasoning behind and what are these parameters, but network classification is very good, so we move forward with this. Then there are several deep networks that has been developed in the recent time. So I will just give you some examples. One is AlexNet. It was created by University of Toronto. It was a pioneering deep CNN that won the 2012 ImageNet Competition Award with an accuracy of 84.6. So in 2012, you could see that just 8 years ago, 84% of accuracy was the best people can achieve, and it was considered one of the very good deep network, AlexNet. Then in 2013, University of Oxford created VGG16. In just 1 year, you can see the accuracy improved from 84% to 92.7%. This is how fast deep research was going on. GoogleNet created in 2014 and won the ImageNet competition. So ImageNet is a worldwide competition, and every year people give their neural networks to show that they have a ImageNet is a standard data set, and to show that their network can perform better segmentation, more accurate segmentation than any other. So in GoogleNet in 2014 won this prize. They have the accuracy of 93.3. And in 2016, Microsoft beat their accuracy again with 96.4% accuracy. So this is the currently, I would say, one of the best classification network, ResNet, for your own classification tasks. If you want to compare the deep neural network models. This is up to 2017. But as you can see, there are starting from AlexNet, ENet, GoogleNet, ResNet, VGG16, and Inception V4. Inception V4 has the highest accuracy. And if you see the number of operations versus number of accuracy, VGG16 performs very good, which is developed by the University of Oxford. So now let us move toward tutorial 3. In this, we want to do semantic segmentation with fully convolutional network, and we will walk through a step-by-step implementation of the most popular architecture for semantic segmentation, the FCN, and implement it using the TensorFlow library in Python 3, along with other dependencies such as NumPy and SciPy. So here are the key features of the FCN architecture. It transfers knowledge from VGG16 developed by University of Oxford to perform semantic segmentation, and the fully connected layers of VGG16 is converted to fully convolutional layers using one-by-one convolution, and this process produces a class presence heat map in low resolution. Then there are skip connection introduced which avoids overfitting, and let us see how we are going to implement FCN8 architecture. So step 1, we want to first load the pre-trained VGG16 model into TensorFlow, which is available on internet. So we are going to see editing this function. So VGG16 function is present. Open this file, and you would see there are several lines on it. It looks like the first line is for loading the model and weights model, then get tensor to be returned from graph. Here you have to define image input, and then you have to define how many layers you want in your own network. So for example, here there are 3 layers involved. If you want to increase the number of layers, you can introduce another line here with layer equal to 9 equal to graph dot same code as here, and then you can return the input image, key probability layer, all the 3 layers, or if you have more layers you can add one more line here. Once we added this, once we have created this VGG16 function, we have to go for a layers function. We focus on creating the layers for a FCN. So use a sorter variable name for simplicity. Layer 3, layer 4, layer south, and apply one-by-one convolution in place of fully connected layer. So here you are seeing convolution in 2D with layer 7, and the kernel size is 1. Similarly, whatever is your parameters you can define here, and then you can create an upsample FCN8 to match size of the final layer. So if the layer 4 was the layer which is just before the upsampling function, you have to match the size of the previous layer. So, and then you have to add the skip connection. So you created an FCN9 layer, and then you can add a skip connection. So for this, there are already in the library, there are functions and commands like tf.add is for creating a skip connection file. Then you do upsampling again, add skip connection again, do upsampling again, add skip connection again. So between 2 layers, you have to do upsampling, skip connection, upsampling, skip connection, upsampling, skip connection. This would improve the accuracy of your network. Then there is optimization function. The next step is to optimize our neural networks, also known as building TensorFlow loss functions and optimizer operations. Here we can use cross entropy as our loss function and ADAM as our optimization algorithm. So this is how the optimization function looks like. You can define here neural network last year, corrected label, learning rate, number of classes, which could be 6, for example, and then reshape 4D tensors to 2D, and each row representing a pixel, each column a class. You can define the reshape function, which is tf.reshape. So if you want to calculate distance from actual labels using cross entropy, you can use softmax cross entropy with logits function. Then take if mean for total loss to reduce mean, and all these. If you are using Adam optimizer for optimization, you can use this function tf.train.adam optimizer. So all these functions are already inbuilt in the library, and you may get through them using reading the manual of the library, the toolbox, and then you can use whatever optimizer function and whatever loss calculation function you want to use. Then let us now go to training function. So here we define the train underscore NN function, which takes in important parameters including number of epochs, batch size, loss function, optimizer operation, and placeholders for input images. So epochs is how many times you want to run your neural network. So define train size, train underscore NN function. Define you can write, for example, 40 if you want to run the learning 40 times. Batch size, how big is your batch size? Where do you want to get your batches from? Then train dot underscore op function for optimization. Cross entropy loss function that you were already defined for loss calculation. Similarly, where is your input images? What are your labels? What is the learning rate? Similarly, you can define all these parameters, and this looks like this. And then finally, there is a run function. It is time to train our nets. So in this run function, we first build our net using the load underscore VGG, then layers and optimize function, and then we train the net using the train underscore NN function and save the inference data for record. So I'll download the data, return the data, and then use the generate batch function to get the batches. Then it will return the 3 layers, layer 3, layer 4, layer 7 that was there, and the resulting network architecture would add a decoder on top of the given VGG model. So this is how you can do. You can use a layers function, define the number of layers here and how many number of classes here. Similarly, you can initialize all variables do you want to give, and then train the neural networks by defining epochs and batch size and images input. You have to write down these 3 things. So this is the GitHub library where this database is available. So what we did in this tutorial, we see how many files are there in a neural network model. So there were 5 files. One was VGG16 function, one was layers function to create the layers, one was optimization function to optimize the network performance, one was training function to train the network, and one was running function to run the network. And I already showed you previously how to create the data set in the previous 2 tutorials. So once you have created the 2 data sets, and once you have downloaded these files, then you can run your network simply using this file, this run function. So once you will all do, you will be ready to perform some image segmentation. And here are some images, some examples of how image segmentation would look like. This is an example of instance segmentation. All cars are coded in different colors. Bicycle, persons, it is available. It is able to detect everything. There is another example from Street View. This image is taken from Street View database. As you can see, all classification, all segmentation is being very nicely. There are some examples from some random images, aeroplane images, then there are some biological images, and a final bottom row, scan of a brain. which is used for segmenting some brain region for functional imaging, or even acute CAT if you want to segment that. So I think that's all for this now. And if you have any questions. Okay, somebody asked for train NN function. Second slide, please, sir. Okay, let me go there. Here. So this is the training file. So in this, when you want to edit this function, you mainly need only 3 parameters to change. You need to change epochs, which you have to tell how many number of epochs you want to run your neural network. You have to tell your batch size, and you have to tell your input images. Rest all are not really required to change. So you have to change only these 3. You have to identify only these 3 things. And in the second slice, we are defining a loss function using cross entropy function, and then it will do automatically all the things. So finally the training loss is summed for each epoch, and then at the end of each epoch you will know what is the total loss, and then you can print it to know how well your network is performing. Yeah, that's all. So that was it from my side, and thank you so much for coming here. And over to you, Professor Deepak.
Thank you very much, Manish sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now in this way we are closing. If anybody wants to ask question, can write in chat window also.
So somebody has asked for any examples with hair segmentation only or eye segmentation only. For eye segmentation, for there is iris segmentation happening in Aadhaar card, and yeah, something like that you can use. I'm not aware of hair segmentation, but definitely there are several works. Blinking eyes. Right now, I'm not aware of any research study with blinking eyes, but I would suggest you going through the Google Scholar and searching it there, and you will be able to find something from there, definitely.
So can you please tell me if there is any net for X-ray image segmentation and so on?
I would suggest using UNet. UNet is very well architecture that has been shown to perform very good for biomedical imaging modalities, and they have used it in not just in X-ray, MRI, and ultrasound also. So for any medical imaging task, I would suggest going for UNet architecture. Okay, thank you, Professor. Thank you for inviting me for this presentation, and it was a very good experience for my side too.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session. It was a marathon for you. 2 sessions you have taken continuously. Thank you very much, sir. And now in this way we are closing the last session of day 5 of short-term training program, and we'll meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Tomorrow is the last day of short-term training program, so we are going to have 3 technical sessions. The first technical session is on moving object detection, where now we are moving to advanced technologies where computation is required more. And then we are also going to learn about the generative adversarial network, GANs, and autoencoders also, which Manish Bhatt sir was talking about. So we will have a practical implementation of all these, and all study material will also be shared in due time. So thank you very much for your participation. We will share the video recording also. And tomorrow at the last, there will be a quiz. And I would request all of you to take that quiz. and there will be feedback session also of 15 minutes verbal, and then there will be a feedback Google form also which you need to fill. Thank you very much for your participation today. I am looking forward to meet you at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Please join back at 10 o'clock on the same link. Remaining things will be provided in due time. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much to all the participants. Now